So what? I'm like Gen Z, right?
Yeah, and I'm older than you.
We have established that by now.
Wait your turn, youngster. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cybernews podcast. I'm Gintras, and these are my colleagues, Neve.
Hello.
And Justus.
Hi.
Justus is joining us from a little town called London. Today we bring you an exclusive from Ukraine. We also discuss the horrible yet thriving Huawei, the Chinese tech giant, and the technology, as it were, behind Biden's awful performance during his debate with Donald Trump. First, though, we thought we could dive into the realms of the audio deepfakes ecosystem, right, Neve?
Yeah.
We had a story last week about how voice messages might be a new frontier, or actually are a new frontier for cyber criminals. Please expand.
I will. I'm not sure if it's necessarily new, but I guess because the like audio has been around for a while, right? So music, audiobooks, podcasts, and voice messages. So as you've probably seen, teens are have their phone and it's attached to their lips somehow. You know, they're constantly sending these voice messages. I personally hate them, but I don't know.
Is it just here in Lithuania?
Nope, it's in the UK as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Justinas, confirm, please.
I confirm.
Is that annoying to you?
Yeah, is it weird that people do that? Do you do that?
I personally I was never targeted by that, but obviously it is just, a continuation of an age-old scam, calling random people, pretending to be someone else. So that's just, an upgrade, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, perfect to get into why these audio deepfakes are happening and how they are happening. Bad actors are basically misusing these kinds of audio, messages to pose as a different person or to pose as a family member, a friend, and then basically trying to swindle people out of their, bank information. There was an interesting article that one of our contributors wrote about how audio deepfakes are essentially threatening online banking because, you have these automated, telebanking calls and, somebody could be posing as like an AI assistant or whatever. But realistically, they're just trying to, swindle you out of your credentials.
Surely, though, I mean, and yes, this is a problem for sure, but banks, my bank at least, I don't know about others, but they're doing something, right? They've introduced these layers of security that you have to kind of pass through, and then only then be connected to like a person on the other end. So I mean, and they're trying to avoid audio conversations with clients as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen
I think for this reason, right?
They're pushing for chats and virtual assistants. Maybe that's the reason. But at the same time, they're closing down like physical points of banks that you can visit and then get stuff done. I don't know.
I mean, audio deepfakes they're becoming really common now, commonplace. There was one case in the UK of a CEO of a UK-based energy firm. I think this is quite a popular story. He believed that he was on the phone with his boss, and his boss asked him to send funds to a supplier in Hungary, saying that the request was urgent and that he needed to be paid within the hour. So this wasn't true. It wasn't his boss. It was somebody who'd cloned his boss's voice, or it sounded like his boss was German, so it sounded like a German-ish voice. And the UK CEO was kind of silly enough to fall for it and send roughly 220,000 euros to a place in Mexico. So. Yeah, that's quite a popular story, and this is happening a lot. There's also Retool, a company that specializes in internal software, was the victim of a spear phishing attack that exposed 27 customer accounts. the threat actor was able to navigate through the multiple layers of security by sending an SMS to an employee asking them to log in. And then after, this is the kicker really, after they had inputted the initial credentials, the threat actor phoned the employee up and cloned another employee's voice from IT. So saying we need the multi-factor authentication code. So really committing
well
to the
planned.
Yeah, definitely well orchestrated and committed to the cause really.
As are probably every phishing attack. We're talking about audio calls specifically, but there's also emails. It's just an age-old problem. People are susceptible to phishing attacks. To this day, with like some of the biggest cyber attacks that happened last year, I think, like against MGM, all these casino companies, these started as phishing attacks. So I think it's a larger problem that we are vulnerable to, we want to believe something so bad that we don't protect ourselves. We just don't see the signs that something might be a scam. And that's the biggest problem, I guess. And AI will definitely, make this problem worse. But it's an old problem. It's nothing new here.
Yeah, exactly. And as you said, this kind of deepfake AI technology will make it so much more difficult to discern whether something is genuine or not.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, AI, let's say these criminals who are already planning these kind of, swindling operations pretty thoroughly, with the help of the AI tools and even like scanning the data. Let's say they want to, get the money from someone and then they decide to pretend this person's, good friend or a brother or a sister or whatnot, so that they would sound more believable. So that they would get the data from the sister, the mother, the brother, and just to sound more plausible, that they would train their little model or whatnot on the whole data about her sister, this person's sister, brother, or a mother or a father, and then the whole conversation would sound so much more plausible because the Gen AI tools are capable of, I guess, creating these convincing dialogues from whatever this person has been saying online or chatting online or emailing online anyway.
Yeah, so it feels like that the AI or the threat actor knows you.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, I mean, let's say Justinas, like I, not me, but your good friend or whoever calls you, right? I mean, but it's not him or her. It's a fraudster, and then it's totally convincible. Like it's totally believable. And would you still fall for like a conversation that is leading somewhere to like a request for a little money, or whatnot? Because that would be, no one asks me money online. And anyway, even if my brother or dad would ask me for money, I would say, just call me, just call me.
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure, if there's money involved, you have to be extra careful. You have to have all these additional security steps, especially nowadays. You have to be aware that you may be targeted. So obviously, if you're asked for money, you should, maybe if my partner's calling me and he says, "Can you wire me some money?" I would be probably okay with it because I would see their number on my phone. But if you want to be extra careful, you can ask, to do a video call. You can ask to, just meet in person, maybe real quick. So there are ways to protect yourself. But a lot of people obviously don't think about that. We think about that because we work in this area and we are constantly, we constantly see these scams and how easily they can swindle people. So I think it's a question of awareness and education.
Oh yeah, and
For
the
sure.
whole like understanding of the general ongoings in the world with the technology and whatnot. That's why I think youngsters, the young folk, are pretty tech savvy, and then they are well aware of these like phishing and swishing.
But I kind of
and
disagree with
No?
that. Yeah, because I feel
Me
like
too, actually.
Yeah, because I feel like the younger, so what, I'm like Gen Z, right? I had no...
You keep saying.
It's a frequent thing.
She just wants to tell that she's younger than you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Yeah. And I'm older than you.
Just rubbing it in your face, basically, every episode.
So we have established that by now, so we can...
Yeah, we can move on. But yeah, so I'm younger than you.
Wait your turn, youngster.
But I feel that I didn't know anything in terms of tech when it came to, like swindling, phishing, all these kind of attacks until I came and worked in this environment.
Okay, I agree. If you don't know, you don't know. But still, as you keep mentioning, the Gen Z, the member of the Gen Z generation, whatever. I mean, you still do not... click on something that is not natural sounding to you in an email, in a link or whatnot.
Can I just interject and base this on some actual hard data? So I did a little research online and I found this interesting report released by Deloitte last year that showed that Gen Z, this is Univ, that Gen Z is more than 3 times more likely to fall for online scams than baby boomers. That's, your parents and grandparents. And some of the reasons, because that is because younger people obviously spend so much more time online. So basically they just, they're putting themselves on a chopping block more often than, their older peers. So that's one reason. So it's surprising, but it's not really, because people are spending a lot of time online, and playing video games doesn't make you tech savvy. We all play video games. We just get better at those video games. We're not learning how to protect ourselves from cyber criminals. I think it's just a common misconception that younger people are more tech savvy. It's just it's just what you probably want to think, especially if you have kids. You want them to be smarter, kinder, more interesting. Usually that's not the case. And usually, everything that you learn comes from your parents, your older peers. So if you have to teach your kids to wash your hands, you have to explain them why you need to wash their hands. They wouldn't come to this conclusion by themselves. So I think the same is true with cyber hygiene. You have to explain that there are risks online, that you have to protect yourself, and why. It doesn't come, just because you scroll on social media a lot. So I think again, it comes to education and raising awareness, and I think every generation, should learn more about how to protect themselves.
Yeah. My daughter is almost 2.5 years now, and I think last year I interviewed this guy from an Israeli company that has released a little children's book about cybersecurity. Like if the parents are working in cybersecurity, how to explain that to their kids. What do they do, and how they're like heroes protecting the world from all sorts of dangers. And I for fun, I was like, because my daughter was interested in the little book because it's like colorful and everything, and there's pictures. And, obviously I was not trying to explain cybersecurity to her, but still, I mean, look, this is a computer, and the dad is like protecting with cookies and whatnot. And then she sees the little page and says, look, a tomato, look, some spaghetti, yay. They don't care. I guess I agree with you, Justinas. It was surprising to hear that stats, but I guess the consolation prize here is that the Gen Z people have no cash, and there's nothing really to steal.
There was an interesting point. I mean, cybercrime evolves with us. So if there's, if the user base is young, so obviously these scams will be tailored to that user base. So if boomer doesn't use YouTube, there is no way they would fall for a YouTube scam.
Or doesn't use
a younger person.
Messaging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Another area where audio deepfakes are already prevalent is politics, obviously.
Massively.
The U.S. presidential election is coming up. Who knows who's going to compete, though? But audio deepfakes are already being used. I'm not sure how many people are falling for it, because I do personally think that, especially in America, people have their minds like set, and nothing's gonna change it. I mean, and people don't even talk about politics these days, because you're not gonna change my mind. I'm not gonna change your mind.
I think
Let's just
people are
leave it in
fickle.
that. Yeah.
I feel like people are fickle, though.
Yeah, but still, audio deepfakes are in the conversation, because Kamala Harris was voice was cloned, and Biden as well had this famous robocall
in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Do you remember these two Russian pranksters who would do this same thing before it was cool?
Yeah.
And they didn't use AI. They didn't use deepfakes. It just shows that people can be easily deceived. So you don't even need that kind of technology. You can be just a good actor, and this will just make it worse, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. So I mentioned politics and the U.S. presidential election, which is coming up in November. Yeah. So I thought this is a little silly, but it was interesting to watch. Cringy, but interesting to watch Biden debate Trump last week.
Painful.
I don't know, Justinas, if you saw that or experts.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, what did you make of that? Because I didn't even manage to watch the whole debate. It was torturous, really, because both of them are
honestly exactly my thought. I mean, I wanted for them to do better. But Trump is definitely, I mean, nobody had high expectations for him. He was just, Trump was being Trump. And Biden, I think, he stumbled on a couple of occasions. But I think the whole thing was a bit overblown. It seems like everyone was waiting for that to happen and, had their little news drafts prepared. Oh, Biden is, is not fit, or Biden is, stumbling. So I think that was a bit overblown, but it certainly had an impact on public opinions. I think I saw the latest opinion polls from yesterday or this morning. Support for Biden fell by 6 percentage points. Yeah, even though,
it's
support
49-43 for Trump.
Didn't rise. It just shows that people are becoming indecisive, or they're not voting for either candidate.
Yeah. The social media space is swarming with these little video memes and whatnot. And I'm obviously the Trumpsters are at work, but it's crazy. I mean, I'm not sure what I want to happen now. Maybe Biden will be replaced or not. But some of the people on the left, I would say, are now trying to explain why Biden's performance was the way it was during the debate. And I guess it wasn't the whole way like this. I mean, he did manage to speak about relevant issues, and actually the debate itself was really policy heavy, actually. So, I mean, Trump not, but Biden did really make the points that he wanted to make, as frail as he was. But some of the folk on social media think they have figured out why Biden looked so puzzled at times. And he frequently spoke with this stare in his eyes. I guess that's what older people do, and it's not ageism, it's just the facts of life, really. Older people are slower, and their brain capabilities are also slower, and it's just reality. So,
talking from experience.
We need research, Ginteras. We need research, Ginteras.
You do have a live example in front of you. So these folks are now trying to kind of cling to the straw of a hypothesis, a very, very silly one, saying that the president was hit with a directed energy weapon, and that gave him a temporary case of this infamous Havana syndrome, and that's why he was so bad in the debate, supposedly bad. I mean, Trump was still worse because he lied all the bloody time. Anyways,
So-
to those of us not in the know, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not in the
you're
know.
not. Havana syndrome is the name of for a group of mysterious illnesses that have cropped up among U.S. diplomats and spies over the past decade, specifically in Cuba. The working theory for years has been that adversarial countries like Russia or China are intentionally targeting Americans with invisible ray guns to give them brain damage.
Wow. Okay. I don't think that's what's giving Biden brain damage. But
So there's a couple of really big accounts on X, millions of followers that are pushing this little theory, quoting or misquoting some Cold War types, saying that, this couldn't have happened with Biden because just the day before the debate, he was really energetic and lively and all that. And then on the debate night, he was really, really frail and weak. How come? And, so I guess this is still making rounds on social media, but I would just say that the theory itself has been debunked already by both the intelligence community and the health specialists as well. In February this year, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence found that it was really unlikely that a foreign adversary was responsible for causing the mysterious ailments back in Cuba. Yes, the assessment is still varying, but the health specialist also said after a test or an experiment that there was no brain damage among the U.S. diplomats at all, and they had like 80 or 90 volunteers experiencing something like that, and they also had no brain damage. So either it's in their heads or the whole threat is being pushed out of nowhere. I don't know. What? Maybe you believe it. I don't know.
No, poor Biden. He's either jacked up on coke or targeted, by Russian space lasers. It's just, I think it's just, another stupid conspiracy nonsense peddled by the far right or, far left, whoever these guys are. Usually they're the same people. And they just needed something to attack Biden some more. So if he's doing really great in these speeches, they say they gave him drugs. If he's stumbling, I guess they're just tired of saying that he's old because Trump is also old.
Yeah.
So they came up with this theory. So it's just another narrative to distract and divide the public, I guess.
Yeah, because I thought that was an attempt to defend Biden and his performance by his groupies.
That's actually a sad state of affairs. If
exactly,
if you have to come up with a theory like that to defend someone, that's actually
To be fair, it's just a few nutties, really. I mean, it's not like a viral theory making rounds, hopefully. So.
Based on nothing but science fiction. Like, I know that I'm interested to understand the technology behind, like, this Havana syndrome or, like, ray
Havana
guns
syndrome
or...
is energy weapons do exist. I mean, that you can direct, like, lasers or electromagnetic pulses, to a person, and then something does happen to your brain, but
because there was
I'm not sure anyone knows what specifically happens, and then whether it happened in the case of the U.S. diplomats.
Because there was there's this YouTuber called Vsauce who does these crazy little experiments.
I'm not Gen Z. I don't know.
You don't need to be Gen Z to enjoy it, Interest. But
thank you. I hate ads, so I don't watch YouTube.
Okay,
sorry.
fair enough. But there was this little like electromagnetic device that you'd put on your head, and it would basically paralyze or give your brain temporary brain damage for a short period of time.
A short period of time.
Well, yeah, for when the device is, and would leave no lasting effects. So it's possible, maybe.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think it's this ray gun type of device that is, transmitting God knows what from where? Russia?
Again,
all the way from Russia?
No, I mean, Russia could have technically implanted someone in the audience, and then arm him with I don't know, maybe eyeglasses that can transmit this kind of stuff. I mean, I'm delving into this territory of the unknown, right? The X-Files.
Yeah.
But yeah, go on, Justinas.
let's just reiterate that this is just a conspiracy theory, and that is just complete and utter nonsense, and that did not happen.
Essentially,
it did not. Yeah, I mean, it's probably, like I said, just a last straw for some knobheads, really, to kind of justify Biden being the candidate still. I mean, they don't seem to accept that Biden and Trump, they're both indeed quite old, and this is gerontocracy they should worry about, and not laser weapons,
Laser weapons is more exciting than old people being in charge.
Well,
so I don't blame them.
Yeah, ageism is bad as well.
Sorry.
But
not sorry.
Because I'm getting older as well, so just be careful.
Okay, be careful.
Right. Okay. From the US to China, the two world superpowers. We had another article this week by our colleague Ernestus about Huawei, the Chinese tech giant, and his article was called "What Apps You Can Find on Huawei Phone After 4 Years of Sanction," and he called it a grueling experience. So it's an interesting story. He tried out the Huawei's detached ecosystem. As we, of course, know, international sanctions have made Huawei move away from Android and begin building their own apps through Harmony, their own mobile operating system. And yes, as Ernestus points out, user friendliness is pretty much non-existent on that ecosystem indeed. For instance, if you want Google Maps or YouTube or on a Huawei phone, yes, tutorials online will explain that you need to change some settings, disable some features, sideload a free third-party app that prioritizes user privacy, install Google Play somehow, and then get the apps you like, and bypass these restrictions. It may take half an hour at least. And actually, I have a personal example, because I had solar panels installed on my roof half a year ago, and then the guys...
Very modern.
Yeah, but these are... I think they're Canadian, but the inverter is Huawei's. It's Chinese. It's very good, by the way. I have nothing against it, but... The reason, the way I control it is through an app, which I could not obviously download from Google Play. So they showed me how, and I did it in 5 minutes, but only because they showed me how. It's pretty much illegal to have an app in the European Union, in the US, to control your solar panels if you have a Huawei inverter. Legally, you just have to work it around, and just like Ernesto,
it's like using a VPN service. I mean,
sort of, yeah. It's all fine. I do see how much energy I'm making every day, but I shouldn't be, because it's illegal.
But you've just outed yourself.
Well, you're not a governmental agency, so I think you're fine.
Well, you never know, man. Right, so. In short, the workarounds are really annoying for users, and other issues might arise as well. The reason, again, like I mentioned, Huawei was sanctioned by being added to the U.S. entity list in 2019, and American companies couldn't sell any technology to it without obtaining a special export license. However, as bad as these apps and the whole process is, Ernestus himself points out in the article that Huawei might have just given up on, trying to sell their stuff in the markets where it's no longer welcome.
Yeah.
They're still selling these inverters, in my case, in Europe. That's fair and square, because this is a different, let's say, welcoming committee in the US and Europe for Chinese tech. I imagine at this point still different. But the reason they don't really care that much about these sanctions is that they're thriving really inside China, and they're chewing on Apple's market share in China, which is probably the most important thing right now. China's leader Xi Jinping is also very happy about this, because it means that the Chinese businesses are less dependent on foreign tech and whatnot. So, and there was another article by The Economist that holds the same view, actually, that that yes, even if more than a dozen rich countries excluded Huawei from 5G contracts and revenues tumbled 30% in 2021, profits collapsed by 70% in 2022, yet Huawei has not just survived, is again thriving. And these are some numbers. In the first quarter of this year, net profit surged by 564% year on year to $2.7 billion. I mean, yes, because it collapsed before, that's why the rise seems so huge,
uptick,
but it's still a rise. It has re-entered the handset business. Its telecoms equipment sales are rising again. And, they have achieved this in large part by replacing foreign technology in its wares with homegrown parts and programs. It's much less vulnerable to American hostility in the future. And The Economist concludes that Uncle Sam's attacks have only made Huawei stronger rather than killed it. I mean, it's probably the case of China's economy being resilient enough already to, not care about sanctions anymore.
And why wouldn't you use technology that comes from your own country that is tailored to what you need rather than, like we wouldn't buy Huawei phones because it wouldn't work for us now, right?
It would be a big
well, it would
fuss,
be, yeah, still. Exactly. But it's not maybe intuitive. It's not like what we want to be accessing, right? If it's all Chinese apps and we're not able to.
It's not.
Is it not?
You can still access like Ernesto's writes. We can still access these,
but you have to
global apps. But you have to
jailbreak it basically.
Yeah.
So that's not really what you buy a device for, right? You buy a device because you want everything that you could possibly want there immediately.
Yeah.
So it's like, I guess it's a bit like maybe an eye for an eye. It's like, okay, you've been added to the US entity list. Okay, well we're going to withdraw everything, and we're going to focus solely on our country. And
I think that's interesting. I think we're doing the same thing that people in China have been doing for years now. In order to access certain Western services, certain American services, they would have to work on these workarounds. They would have to find a way to use it. So now we're having a taste of that, I guess, as well.
But it's not the same, though. China has been doing intellectual property theft for years. It's not intellectual property.
No. But I mean, people accessing social media platforms like Twitter or Instagram in China, where it's banned.
Yeah.
So people are still using them because they find workarounds to use it. So you're doing the same thing with your Huawei app now. So we're just getting, the same treatment.
Well, I guess people aren't using Huawei, maybe. I know one person that had a Huawei phone.
I know multiple people who used to have Huawei phones, and they were very, very good.
Yeah, I've heard.
People loved them.
I've heard good things about them.
Just because it's Chinese. I mean, yeah, you can worry about privacy and safety because it's China made. But it is a private company. It's like China's national champion, but it's private.
Also, I find this argument surprised that the company is still doing great, a bit frustrating because the reason of all these sanctions was not to destroy Huawei. It was to make sure that the Chinese don't have access to critical American or European systems, not to destroy the company. So I think these sanctions were not targeted at the company in a way that would stop its success. So I don't really get why it's such a big surprise. And as Neve mentioned, people still like the technology and they still use it in countries where it's available.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of countries like that. The world does not consist of the States and Europe.
Yeah,
agreed. That's true. And I mean, in the case of Huawei and other Chinese companies, whether they're state-financed more or private, like, for instance, this restriction to export chips to China, it's championed by the US as well. But in the case of Huawei, for instance, they still build their own chips and they import them from somewhere else. They find workarounds and I think The Economist mentioned that they have actually even chips to spare to help other Chinese businesses build their own AI models and whatnot.
Honestly, I think it's exciting. I mean, it's just like it's a normal business practice, you know. Competition brings innovation. I mean, the greatest inventions in, you know, space travel happened during the 60s, 70s, you know, when there was this huge rivalry between these two blocks. So maybe we're going to see the same thing here, which is good. We're going to have more things to choose from. You know, humanity is going to have more paths to survival. Maybe that's my optimistic take on this.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be a negative.
Yeah, but the ban will have to be lifted in order for us to enjoy the fruits of this competition.
Yeah, well, maybe it will be. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
All right.
Well, speaking of innovation.
Yes, Justinas is the one who went to Ukraine recently, and he brought back some impressions and news from a large conference that took place in Kiev, if I'm right? And
that's right.
And it was called Power Up Ukraine. So it looks kind of a conference about IT and technology and how is it all working out for Ukraine these days. As we all know, Ukraine has been at war with Russia that has invaded the country in 2022. It's been 2.5 years.
Yeah.
It's seemingly stuck. No one's going anywhere. I mean, with the war. And how is the country doing? And we're all interested in that. I haven't visited. You haven't visited since the war started. Justinas has, and it's pretty interesting to hear what you saw, what you heard, and what do you think about the whole Ukraine's IT sector, technology sector, and people. What do they think, feel, or talk about?
Yeah. So if I may just start, if you two were now to be teleported to Kiev without knowing much about the situation there, you initially may not even realize that the war was raging, just several hundred kilometers away. The streets are bustling and life seems to go on as normal, but it's not. It's not normal. Even though I was told that Kiev is the safest place in Ukraine, and it probably is, the first time you hear an air siren, which could happen numerous times a day or not happen at all. So the first time you hear it, it's chilling.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to run for shelter or get at least, 2 sets of walls to separate you from the outside. But I haven't met a single person who does that anymore, because if you heed every warning, you may not have time, to work or to take care of your children. It's just too much of an interruption to their daily routines. So people adapt. They work from, some offices moved to basements. So even if there is an air raid, you can still continue working. And most people just check Telegram to see if there's, a chance of an actual threat. Because the thing is, the Russians use a lot of so-called dumb missiles they got from Iran. And the vast majority of those are simply shot down. Some occasionally still hit the target, and in some cases that may be a residential building of no military value whatsoever, targeted simply to instill fear in the local population. The thing is, what I've noticed is that fear is something a lot of Ukrainians don't really have because they cannot afford it, because they need to think about their future and how to survive all these different ways Moscow is trying to make their lives miserable. One of the more recent, efforts to do so is targeting Ukraine's energy infrastructure. And that is, another daily reminder of war in Kiev, which is regular blackouts. So in this case, businesses also adapt. Most companies, most vendors or homes have their own power generators. So you may do, maybe, in the middle of doing some grocery shopping in a supermarket that could be anywhere in the world, and everything is suddenly pitch black. And then, after a minute or two, all these little lights come up, generators to power the fridges and so on and so on. What else? Sometimes it also feels like there are definitely more women in the streets, in the restaurants, in the cafes because of the ongoing draft of men, which is obviously a very sensitive topic, and it certainly finds its way into every conversation. It affects companies because, men can be called to a front line, and you suddenly lose an expert, you lose, a colleague, an employee, because they have to do this another thing. Extremely high skilled individuals sometimes are called to do, military service at the government level to strategize and that sort of thing. So the closest I could compare this is to the COVID-19 pandemic that we all experience, and how we, as humans adapted to this new normal, even though it was obviously, far from our everyday normal. So that's the mood I got in Ukraine. People are perhaps less optimistic than they were just a year ago, when it seemed that the Ukrainian counteroffensive was going well. But they are still certainly determined to push through and come out better of this. And you definitely get that. I definitely got that from, business representatives I spoke to. And, a lot of people would tell me that, war is terrible, but there is also a lot of opportunity in war, and people are ready to, grasp that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess people do just get used to, the new normal, like you said. And I was wondering, did you know much about kind of Ukraine's technology industry before visiting Kiev?
Yeah, I did a similar story last year, because there was a big Ukraine tech conference here in London. So that's how I actually, ended up in Kiev this year. So Ukraine tech sector was booming before war. And when I say before war, I mean, the large scale invasion 2 years ago. You have companies like Grammarly, they're from Ukraine. You have, other businesses. Interestingly, tech sector was the only export-oriented sector that grew after the invasion. So in 2022, it recorded, I think, a 6% growth in export. And you have to bear in mind that overall Ukrainian economy dropped by 30%. So it's, Ukraine's tech sector is a shining beacon of its economy. And obviously they're trying to attract as much investment as possible. Because a lot of, money that Ukraine has, it goes to military purposes, but they still need, to boost up their civil economy. Last year, tech sector was not doing so great. I think, the impact of war caught up with it a little bit. So it recorded, I think, about 8% drop. That's according to Ukraine's IT Association. But I was also told that this had a lot to do with, external factors, such as, volatile global markets. And this year, Ukraine's economy is actually forecast to grow a little bit. So, I mean, the entire economy, and the tech sector is definitely expected to do much better this year as well.
How large a part of Ukraine's economy is the tech sector? I mean, the percentage of the GDP, is there a number?
Yeah, I guess it's one of the key sectors in Ukraine. So it's a strategic sector, and Ukraine's government designated 6 economy sectors that it said is going to be a basis of Ukraine's recovery after the war. And the IT sector is definitely one of them. in addition to agriculture, which is still, a big part of economy there, construction, which is naturally it's going to boom because there is so much rebuilding to do, and all these, several other sectors like military, industrial complex, one of them. So I think services account for around 60% of Ukraine's economy. So IT is part of that.
Mm. And you speak about the rebuilding process. And the tech sector is going to play a role in this, right? What specifically, is it going to be startups that are playing a role in getting the, economy back on track, or what specifically is the tech sector going to contribute to the rebuilding process?
So there are different companies, obviously. There are new startups that were founded just because of that, just after the invasion. I spoke to this 3D printing, industrial 3D printing startup, which was founded only last year. And they've already printed the first residential house in Ukraine.
Wow.
So that's quick. AI is definitely going to play a big role because industrial printing on that scale, we had 3D printing has been around for years now, but only now, even globally and in Ukraine as well, we see that it's scaling up really fast. And it's going to grow as a business because of all these AI solutions that they are developing. So, companies like that are going to play a huge role in rebuilding Ukraine, I think, for sure.
Ukraine is also building a lot of drones to aid their war effort in the east and elsewhere. Are these drones more or less built by volunteers, or is this like a cooperative effort between the state and the tech companies or something like that? The science project, so to speak, because there's thousands of drones being built every day, right?
Yeah, so I don't know the specifics, but certainly the way Ukrainian economy can work nowadays is definitely based on cooperation between private businesses and the government. Government does a lot to raise funds, and it definitely invests, in companies and technologies that can be useful, in war efforts. So there are different funds and different ecosystems to support that. As I said, I cannot give you the specifics right now, but they are definitely, they're definitely working together, and there are definitely, these funds and, as I said, tech incubators that push out all these new technologies and work on innovations.
Mm-hmm. Not entirely tech related, obviously, the question, but from your conversations with people, whoever they are, did you get the feeling that they want victory more, or simply the war to end? However it may be, not in a loss of statehood, obviously, but maybe in some negotiations or some loss of territory, whatever.
So a lot of people I spoke to, first of all, they want their loved ones to be back from the front lines and be back safely. That's what they care about.
Yeah.
They also, obviously, no one is willing to do any concessions to Russia. I think we've passed that point a long time, and if people outside think that Ukrainians are just going to give up everything and say, okay, we're just let's make a deal with Russia and a bad deal with Russia, that's not going to happen. Obviously they want peace, but they will never have the same relationship they had with Russia. That's the feeling I got. Russia made a lifetime enemy for itself, and people say that Russia may be defeated. Russia, we may have some sort of a deal eventually. But they don't see Russia as a potential partner anymore. They don't see Russia. They will not trust Russia. So
yeah, of course.
that's the feeling I got.
Yeah.
Who would really?
Yeah.
And that's not even like xenophobic to say this. If you attack your neighboring country and still call it a brotherly nation, whatever the hell are you doing? I mean, get away.
There's nothing brotherly about that. There's no brotherly left in that relationship. No. They're looking. They're very. As I said, they're very determined, and they very determinedly are looking, to other regions of the world. They're expanding globally. They're very resilient, and they want nothing to do with Russia, even when the war is over.
Absolutely.
Russia had a chance. Now Ukraine has the world, to invest and trade with.
One last question, I think. What can we expect to see from Ukraine, particularly the emerging tech scene there?
Well, I think it's going to be very exciting, first of all. I frequently heard, I used to hear people say that, Kyiv is the new Berlin about, its party scene. But nowadays, people are saying it about its tech scene. So it only shows that, what they mean is that there are so many startups, so many startups founded every year. And I think we're going to see some exciting things coming from that. A lot of, new companies and, established companies, they're definitely embracing AI like the rest of the world did. Just a year ago, it was just, a talking point. Nobody seriously considered this. And, a year on, there are dozens of companies that are actually based on that they're developing their own custom algorithms. They're developing their own custom technology. So I think we're going to see some exciting things coming out from Ukraine in the following years.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't even be surprising because Eastern Europe, Russia, even Ukraine, they were always famous for let's say amateurishly, but very good, like programmers and IT specialists and engineers.
Exactly. Exactly. I was gifted this book, on the history of Ukrainian information technology and computing science. So the first computer in continental Europe was, developed by Ukrainian scientists in Kyiv, which was part of the Soviet Union at the time, of course, but they do have a very strong scientific base. And I was told they have very strong math schools, and you can definitely see that in the companies and technologies that they're developing, because they're hardcore technologies. They're not a lot of new startups are based on services, and e-commerce. And not in Ukraine. They're doing like hard tech.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah. I mean, the difference, again, I don't have much information about it, but I imagine in Russia, where you still have the shackles of the government, basically, where however good you are, you're still going to be, under the umbrella of...
Honestly, we shouldn't... I'm sorry for interrupting, but we shouldn't, as optimistic as we should feel, about some parts of the Ukrainian economy, we shouldn't underestimate Russia, because that's the other thing that I was constantly hearing from, people I spoke to, is that the Russians learned the lesson. They also have great scientists, great, technicians, and they're working on innovations at full speed as well. And they're also deploying that at the front lines. So, it's a race. It's not, we shouldn't underestimate Russia.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like everyone was saying that Russia's going to lose in months in 2022 summer or something, but that was naive and still is.
But obviously that's something that is driving, Ukrainian determination, and that's why they're, racing to innovate. So again, we have race between, two warring parties, and we're getting a lot of innovation from that.
Yeah. War is bad, though, so let's just
we're anti-war here on the Cybernews podcast.
Yeah. Thank you, Justinas, for your impressions and tales from Ukraine.
Thank you.
It's pretty inspiring.
No worries.
Yeah. This was the Cybernews weekly podcast. Justinas, Niamh, and me, Gintras, Thank you for your attention. Listen and watch us on YouTube, on Spotify. We bid farewell to you all until next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.